So today we're diving into a really tough case.
Yeah.
The case of Cherish Perrywinkle.
It's a heartbreaking one.
It really is. It's one that I think a lot of people remember, even though it was back in 2013. We're talking about Jacksonville, Florida. Imagine, we're a mom, Rain Perrywinkle, struggling to provide for her 3 daughters. It's a Friday night, just a normal night, go into the Dollar General, trying to make ends meet.
Trying to get what you need.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's when Donald Smith comes into the picture. He approaches Rain, and, he seems like he's trying to help.
Like a good Samaritan almost.
Right, exactly. Offers to buy clothes for the kids, says he's got a Walmart gift card, even mentions his wife is going to meet them at Walmart.
Oh, wow. Building that trust.
Yeah, very calculated.
Creating that sense of normalcy, like everything's fine.
Right, preying on her vulnerability.
And we have excerpts here that detail everything that happened that night. Smith's background, the trial, all of it. But what we really want to do is look beyond just what happened. Like, how could something like this happen?
Yeah. And one thing we have to remember, this wasn't just some random guy, right? This was a registered sex offender.
Oh, right. With a history. So it's even more disturbing.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge part of this case.
And it's terrifying because there's even surveillance footage from the Walmart on Lem Turner Road, and you can see them all walking into the store.
Just normal family, it seems.
Right, like anybody else. And Smith's even interacting with the kids like he's some friendly family friend.
Is building that facade. Predators do this all the time.
It's chilling, and then it gets even worse inside the store.
Oh, yeah?
Smith offers to buy Cherish a McDonald's cheeseburger. Seems harmless enough on the surface, right?
I mean, keeping her occupied?
Yeah, maybe while he's shopping with Rain.
But looking back...
That's the classic tactic. Isolation.
So disturbing.
Get the child away from any protection. And it worked. Cherish walks right out of that Walmart with Smith.
Unaware of the danger.
There's that image, from the security footage.
Haunting.
It really is.
Broad daylight. A place you think is safe.
And that's the last time Rain sees her daughter.
Can you imagine?
The panic.
The frantic search. That's when she calls 911.
And the authorities, they launch a massive search.
Amber Alert goes out. They're looking for Smith's van.
But here's the thing. They know he's not just some random guy.
Right.
They know they're looking for a registered sex offender.
This isn't just a random act. This is a pattern.
And that makes this case even more important.
It really does.
Because it raises so many questions about how these things can happen.
About the system. Did it fail? Was he being monitored?
And those are the questions we need to be asking.
Absolutely.
Because maybe, just maybe, if things had been different...
If there had been better safeguards...
Cherish might still be alive?
It's a tough reality.
It is. But the search for Cherish continues.
And thankfully, they got a tip.
Yeah, leading them right to Smith's van.
On I-95. That same morning.
So they apprehend him.
But he won't say where Cherish is.
Oh, God.
The search continues. Hope starts to fade.
And then comes the news that no one wanted to hear.
They find Cherish's body in a creek behind a church.
Not far from where they arrested Smith.
It's devastating.
And the medical examiner confirms the worst.
Sexual assault, strangulation.
Just awful. A reminder of how much evil there is in the world.
It rocks the community.
Yeah.
And the focus shifts to the legal system.
To getting justice for Cherish. And because of how serious this crime was in Smith's history.
The prosecution goes for the death penalty.
They argue that this was all planned out, that he knew what he was going to do.
And that he's a danger if he ever gets out.
This case becomes a fight for justice.
To make sure Cherish didn't die in vain.
And the evidence against Smith is overwhelming.
We've got the surveillance footage, witnesses, the forensics.
It all points to him.
But the defense, they have a tough job.
How do you even defend someone like that?
Well, we'll get into that more later.
Okay.
But they basically try to paint Smith as a product of his past.
Trying to humanize him.
Trying to make the jury see him as a person.
Not just a monster, but with a crime this horrific.
It's a tough sell.
It really is. So before we go on to the trial,
okay,
what are your initial thoughts on all of this?
Well,
it's heavy stuff.
It is.
But we need to talk about it.
We do. It's easy to just call Smith a monster,
Yeah.
But to really understand what happened,
right,
we need to look deeper.
Okay.
Like what in his past could have led to this. And our sources, they paint a really disturbing picture. This guy had a history of violence.
A long history.
Especially against children.
And we keep hearing he was a registered sex offender.
Right.
What does that even mean? How does someone get that label?
Well, it goes way back, actually.
Oh, wow.
Like back to the 70s.
Really?
That far back.
Yeah, there was an arrest for indecent assault on a child.
That's serious.
Very serious. But back then...
The consequences weren't what they are now.
So like a slap on the wrist.
Pretty much. And it didn't seem to deter him.
Oh, no.
Because in the 90s,
Yeah.
he was charged with even worse stuff.
Like what?
Attempted kidnapping.
Oh, God.
And lewd and lascivious assault on a child.
I'm not even sure what that means.
It's basically any sexual acts with a minor that's harmful or inappropriate,
I see.
even without physical contact.
Okay.
And he was convicted for those.
Did some time in prison?
So he actually faced consequences that time.
He did, but then
Yeah.
he gets released.
Back into society.
Yep. Even with those convictions.
That seems like where the system failed.
Yeah, it really highlights a pattern we see with these kinds of offenders. Offense, incarceration,
Release,
and then reoffense.
it's a revolving door.
And it puts everyone at risk.
Exactly.
So he's released. But now he has to register as a sex offender, right?
Right. That's supposed to keep track of him.
Hope sure doesn't do it again.
The idea is to let communities know.
So they can protect themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not perfect.
It's not foolproof.
No. Offenders have to comply with the rules,
And law enforcement, they have to monitor them.
which takes a lot of resources.
And it seems like those safeguards just weren't enough with Smith.
They weren't. He was under the radar,
Just blending in.
acting like a normal guy.
It makes you wonder if registering them is even enough.
It's a good question. The registry is just one tool.
Right.
It doesn't address the root cause.
Like, why do they do this?
Exactly. Registering them doesn't change who they are.
Or what they might do.
We need to understand why they do these things.
And try to stop them from doing it again.
And that's the bigger challenge.
So it's not just about knowing where they are.
It's about addressing those underlying issues.
But are we doing enough of that?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just putting them in prison and then letting them out
Right.
without addressing the deeper issues.
There's not a solution.
It's like putting a bandage on a broken bone.
We need more than that.
We need real treatment programs.
Rehabilitation. To help them actually change.
Yeah, that's what's going to prevent future harm.
But that feels so overwhelming.
It's a big challenge.
Like, what can we even do? What can we learn from this case?
Well, I think there are a few key things.
Okay, I'm listening.
First, we need to know the signs.
Okay.
The signs of predatory behavior. The grooming tactics.
How they get close to kids.
Exactly. We need to be aware of the red flags.
So, like, anyone who's too friendly with kids. Especially strangers.
Yeah. Be cautious. Trust your gut.
If something feels off,
Don't be afraid to speak up.
better to be safe than sorry.
Absolutely. And community involvement is huge.
Okay.
We can't just rely on law enforcement.
We all have to play a part.
Exactly. Be involved in your community.
Sure.
Support organizations that protect kids.
Support those groups.
Be vigilant in your neighborhood.
If you see something, say something.
Exactly. Create a culture of safety.
Where everyone's looking out for each other.
And finally, we need systemic change.
Okay.
The way we deal with sex offenders.
It's not working.
Registering them isn't enough.
What else can we do?
Better monitoring, more effective treatment.
Real rehabilitation.
Yes. It's a complex issue,
It really is.
but we have to address it.
We owe it to Cherish.
And to all the victims,
To learn from this and do better.
it's a call to action.
It is. Okay, so now let's move on to what happened after
It's a trial
the trial that gripped the nation. It's a journey through the legal system.
with its strengths and its weaknesses.
And we'll break it all down in the final part of our deep dive. So the trial, it was a huge deal.
Oh yeah, the whole country was watching.
Everyone wanted justice for Cherish.
Yeah.
And the evidence,
It was all there.
it seemed like an open and shut case.
You would think so.
But even with all that, the
Yeah.
legal system,
It's complicated.
it can be. But the prosecution, they were really thorough.
They had to be.
They had to prove that Smith did it, without a doubt.
Beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the standard.
And it wasn't just about proving he took Cherish.
Right.
They had to show he planned it.
Premeditation.
Exactly.
And they used everything they had.
Like the surveillance footage from Walmart.
Right there. You see him leading Cherish away,
And then the witnesses, people who saw him that night.
describing his behavior,
Yeah.
how he was acting.
Rain Perrywinkle even testified,
Oh, I can't imagine.
having to relive that night.
Talking about how he manipulated her.
Must have been so painful.
Her testimony was powerful, though.
It really showed what kind of person Smith was.
A predator.
And then there's the DNA.
Oh, yeah, that's undeniable.
Smith's DNA was on Cherish's body,
linking him directly to the crime.
The medical examiner also testified
about Cherish's injuries.
Awful, but it left no doubt about what happened.
No doubt at all.
So, I mean, with all that evidence...
Right. It's a mountain of evidence.
What could the defense even do?
Well, they tried to humanize Smith.
Humanize him?
They talked about his past, his childhood, mental health issues.
Trying to make the jury feel sorry for him.
Maybe sway them towards a lighter sentence.
But how can you excuse something like this?
You can't. But they're called mitigating factors.
I see.
Things the jury can consider.
When deciding on a punishment.
Exactly.
But with a crime this awful,
yeah.
I don't know how much sympathy the jury had.
Well, they didn't take long to decide.
Really?
Only 14 minutes.
Wow.
Guilty on all charges.
What?
Kidnapping, sexual assault.
Murder.
And the jury was unanimous.
It sounds like the evidence really spoke for itself.
It did. But then came the sentencing phase.
Life in prison or the death penalty?
Exactly. A huge decision.
And the prosecution, they wanted the death penalty.
They said he planned this.
That he was a danger to society.
That he could hurt someone else.
If he ever got out.
Right. They wanted to make sure that never happened.
And the defense.
They kept arguing for leniency.
For life in prison.
They kept bringing up Smith's past.
But in the end.
Wasn't enough.
The jury recommended the death penalty.
Unanimously.
Wow.
And the judge agreed. In 2018, Smith was sentenced to death.
I bet that brought some peace to Cherish's family.
Some sense of justice.
But it doesn't bring her back.
No, it doesn't.
And it doesn't erase the pain.
Unfortunately not.
And of course, Miss Lawyers appealed.
They tried everything to overturn the verdict.
Or the sentence.
Yeah, they fought it every step of the way.
I imagine that was hard for Cherish's family.
To have to keep reliving this.
Over and over again.
It must have been. But each appeal,
yeah,
it was denied. All the way up to the Supreme Court.
So as of right now,
November 2024,
Donald Smith is still on death row.
Awaiting execution.
The legal system has done what it can.
But this case,
it stays with you.
It does. It reminds us that we have to be vigilant.
That we have to protect our kids.
And that we need to do more to prevent these tragedies.
We can't just rely on the courts.
We all have a role to play.
So to everyone listening,
think about what you can do.
To make a difference, to make the world safer for kids.
Even small things can help.
Support organizations, be aware of your surroundings.
Speak up if you see something that's not right.
Because every child deserves to be safe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we can't let Cherish's story be forgotten.
We have to learn from it. And we have to do better.
For Cherish. And for all children.